Here is how you can build real marketing experience without begging for internships or working for free. The problem is not always that you have done nothing. The problem is that you're looking at experience too narrowly. Because if you only count experience as someone hired me into an official marketing role, then of course you will feel like you have nothing to show. I'm Roma and this is Marketing Career Ladder, the show where students and recent graduates get real answers about breaking into marketing. And today's guest is Hannah Lobocki, digital marketing specialist at Prospect 13. In this episode, Hannah explains why a nice looking portfolio piece is not enough, why your thinking matters most than just a nice looking final asset, and what makes your work commercially believable. This conversation is all about how to stop saying I have no experience and start turning one small self-made project into real proof that actually makes sense to the employers. So if you're a student, career switcher, or recent grad and you keep thinking I don't have enough experience to apply yet, then stay till the end because I'll pull out the 3 things Hannah said that actually matter and will provide you with one simple proof step that you can complete this week. For some reason, students think that they don't have any experience whatsoever. What do you think they usually get wrong about it?
A lot of it is how you define experience, and I think we look at it too narrowly. We think about someone formally hiring you in an official marketing position, and that's then what classes as experience.
Yeah.
But realistically, that means that everything you've done until that point, or everything that you could be doing alongside, is just not going to be considered in that, which means you might sell yourself short in interviews. The key thing that I would look for is that you learned something, that it allows you to explain your thinking behind it, and that you have an outcome. It's less about the numbers. I don't think you have to have impressive numbers at the end of it, but more show that you understand the business purpose. Not just that they can use a tool or that they can write a blog post, but how did they approach it and why did they do that?
Hi Hannah, thank you very much for coming here and thank you very much for joining Marketing Career Ladder. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So the first topic that I've prepared for you, and I would love to talk about experience, because I tend to see quite often that for some reason students think that they don't have any experience whatsoever. What do you think they usually get wrong about it?
I think a lot of it is how you define experience, and I think we look at it too narrowly. Of course, like generally speaking, we think about someone formally hiring you in an official marketing position, and that's then what classes as experience.
Yeah.
But realistically, that means that everything you've done until that point, or everything that you could be doing alongside things you've been doing and like expanding your skills, your horizon, is just not going to be considered in that, which means you might sell yourself short in interviews. There's a lot that can just be learned on the side, especially in marketing. There's so many tools that you can explore or platforms that you can try for yourself. And I think we need to just broaden that definition of experience.
So basically you need to do the homework besides all the uni stuff as well. Just work on yourself, develop new skills.
Yeah.
That's going to be really valuable, as I assume.
Definitely. I would generally say, like, if you're an early career professional, I think the skills are useful throughout your career, but especially early on, I'd say what's really important is that you're willing to learn, you show initiative, you're curious about understanding how things work, and really that's what it comes down to when you're building your experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about small, like self-made projects, what type of self-made project somebody could make that will make you say that actually this counts as experience and you better put it in your CV or to show it in your portfolio?
I think there's a lot of different options. The key thing that I would look for is that you learned something, that it allows you to explain your thinking behind it, and that you have an outcome. It's easy. You could say I'm going to spend a whole day learning about Google Analytics, but it's difficult to prove at the end of the day what that means. Whereas if you're saying I'm building a campaign for this brand, you can have an outcome, or you could make up a case study for that. So, or even if we think about social media, starting a social media channel, a Substack blog, a podcast, or using case studies, there's so many ways of doing it out there. So when I was at uni, I would say I definitely did the traditional route in that I did internships and placements during uni, but I did my master's during COVID, so it was lockdown.
Okay, I
And
see.
house plans were booming. Everyone had house plans and was taking photos of their house plans. So I set up an Instagram account sharing about my house plans. And it was partially because I was bored, because there was not much to do.
Fair enough.
But also, it was super useful in exploring the platform in a bit of a different capacity, because when you're posting for yourself, you just post whatever you want. But joining the house plant community, it sounds funny now, but it's really useful in getting to try different things. You have to record your content. You then edit your content depending on what it is. You connect with other people. You really grow a community. You learn how to play the algorithm. And if you wanted to, you could even set up digital ads and try and play around with that.
Thank you very much. This is so valuable. Thank you very much for this information. And if someone only has, as we discussed as well, like Canva, like Google Docs, for example, and some classworks, how should they choose the best first proof piece to build?
I think I would approach it from a point of what do you feel most passionate about, because I think that's going to produce your best work. If someone had classwork available, they could make up a case study with it, say what was the status quo, the situation, and then what did they do and what was the outcome of it. It might be difficult because when I think back to my classwork, a lot of it was you would develop the campaign for a fictional brand, but you wouldn't actually get to implement it, so there is no real outcome. So there is that. But then you could just pick a brand that you're passionate about and fictionally create a mock campaign or something that you want them to do. Like you think maybe they're launching a new product. How would they go about it?
All right, I see. So let's imagine like like a clothing brand, and they're trying to implement like a new fabric for their clothes or something like that. How would you approach it? How would you market it? What would be the target audience for that? What would be the message that would like your campaign to like run for? That sort of thing.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then diving into the next section of today's interview, we're going to talk about the self-made project in a bit more details. So what makes one simple self-made project sort of like a smart choice, but the other one just a waste of time?
So I personally think any project is going to be better than a waste of time, because even if it doesn't secure you an interview or what we're trying to achieve, right, you will learn something from it, and I think that's going to be useful. But to get the most out of it and hopefully then get interviews and improve your CV, your portfolio, like I say, I think it's important that you have an outcome. I think it's really important that you can explain your thinking behind it. Why did you choose to do something? Or is there a hypothesis that maybe you're trying to figure out how an audience is going to react to something, so that's what you try. Why did you try it? What was your hypothesis? And then how did you go about it? What was the outcome? What did you learn?
I got it. But so I would assume that probably the most valuable sort of proof asset you can put in your portfolio, it could be like a case study, as we mentioned earlier as well. But from my point of view, sort of like the weaker side could be just an Instagram post, just a visual type thing without actually explaining why you've created this type of post, why for this company specifically, and just to make it visually appealing, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the best thing to do is really start from the back, almost turn it on its head, and think about what are you trying to achieve, and what do you need to do that. Instead of, it's so easy to jump to the fact that, this is the platform, so we're going to need a social media post, so I'm going to create something in Canva or whatever tool you want to use. But you then, if you approach it that way, it might not actually serve the purpose that you want it to, and therefore not get you to where you want to. So definitely think that comes back to kind of the thinking element, like what is your thinking behind it and what's the context. So
I see. We've sort of discussed this earlier already, but I want to know your opinion about this particular question regarding portfolio. What makes a portfolio piece actually commercially believable, rather than just another marketing portfolio theater or just a nice looking student exercise?
Yeah, probably. I think when we think about commercial believability, it's less about the numbers. I don't think you have to have impressive numbers at the end of it, but more show that you understand the business purpose.
Definitely. Because I remember we had a conversation with Eric Doyle and we've talked about the CV and how to position yourself as a more strong candidate. Really important to show that little point of difference, something that differentiates you in particular from other people who are applying for jobs. I think that's really important, especially when you're creating any other like outputs, campaigns, case studies, whatever it is. Show your point of difference. Don't try to be like everyone else. And talking about the mistakes, so what are like the most common mistakes you think that make a self-made project feel way weaker than it really is?
So probably fluffing it up a little bit. I think, like I said, it doesn't have to be the most impressive numbers or the most impressive project. I think what's important when I think about hiring someone early on in their career, like I say, I want them to be open to learning and like willing to expand what they can already do. Obviously bring their own experience into it as well.
I also wanted to ask you, once you've mentioned that earlier in your career it's really important to show that thinking, like to show the case study, to show the proof. What was it like for you? Do you remember when you just got your first marketing job? What helped you to get it?
So my first marketing job was for a marketing agency as an SEO, a search engine executive, and part of it was being German speaking, so I'm from Germany.
Oh wow.
And the role was dealing with German clients as well and creating their content. So that was something that set me apart, I suppose, given that we're in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of it was pretty much what I've been saying, like just wanting to learn and pick up things. And like I said, I had some experience through internships, especially in SEO, so that was something that helped. But that is traditional experience as you would expect from a graduate.
Were you always passionate about SEO?
No, I kind of fell into it, which I think happens with a lot of marketers. I did a placement during my master's, and the lady who ran the placement, she immersed us in SEO, she put us through courses, and then that's kind of where it started.
If somebody would ask you like, what's like one cool thing about SEO, what do you like the most about it? What would you answer?
So I really like the technical side of things. Crawling websites and looking at where you have issues with links or code or that kind of. I don't know how to code. I couldn't code a website, but looking through like basics of code, I think is quite enjoyable. And then marrying it all up and making sure that it works again.
Wonderful. That sounds quite exciting.
Yeah. And did you feel any of the things you learned from your time dabbling in SEO came in useful for social media stuff?
I think the importance of the keywords, that's what I've learned, because most of the people don't really know, but I'm gonna explain it to you. Recently, I think the Google update included Instagram and their like captions and the title that you give, especially with the YouTube as well, since it's like under the Google. That all the keywords that you include, people can actually search it on Google and find your videos on Instagram or any other social media platform that are connected with the Google. That's something I didn't know, and once I discovered that, I started to immediately use that as an advantage. So probably that keywords, yeah. Before we dive into the most important section of today's interview, perhaps the most important one in my opinion, I've got only one rule for all of my interviews. There is no holding back. We're gonna give them the blueprint on how to actually build that commercially believable, valuable asset for their portfolio. Can we make it happen?
Of course.
Perfect, let's crack on. So if someone only has 7 to 5 hours per week, and definitely they would prefer to use just free tools, what's one realistic 7-day proof project they could build?
I think I would pick a brand or a campaign that's currently running. If you see a campaign out there and you think this looks great, or maybe you don't like it, analyze it and look at what you like about it, what are the principles behind it, maybe what do you not like about it, what would you improve. That could be something to do. Or if you picked a brand and you set your own campaign goals, I would try and contain it. so that it doesn't turn into a massive, you only have 3 to 5 hours in a week's time, you don't want it to turn into a massive project. But say you like a brand and you go onto their website or their social media and you see an asset and you think you could improve it. Start there.
Perfect. You know what I picked up from your answer as well? That's quite interesting, because especially during my studies, we had a couple big projects, big campaigns that we were doing with the clients, but we had a team at that moment, and roughly about 10 or 11 people were involved in that campaign. And probably because of that, people get used to run campaigns in general. They assume that they can do it on their own. They might do it. I'm not saying that they're not able to do that, but it's gonna take so much time, and you're gonna miss some important information because we all make mistakes. And for that reason, people tend to put quite a lot into the campaign. What would you say they should deliberately keep out from that to keep it simple and finishable?
If you were to run a campaign plan, I would focus on the strategic impact of it. Like I said earlier, why are you doing it? So if you have a company, what's the objective? That's the fictional company or the company, but it's the objective that you set for them. What is it? And then from there, I would create a campaign plan, but I wouldn't create every single asset for the plan. I would then, out of the campaign plan, pick a piece that I think I can deliver best on, probably. And then create that piece of the campaign plan. And then I would lean into the fact that it's a fictional project, but it is for the portfolio. You are creating your own experience. So I don't think there's anything wrong with not being able to then measure the results. Obviously, absolutely. In a real world environment, you would want to know.
Yeah, definitely. And if you would have to set the non-negotiable assets that the person should deliver, would you say it's important to do competitor research, or maybe to know their target audience, to define it clearly, to provide one proof asset? Is it a video, any visual, whatever it is? What would you say the non-negotiables one?
I would say understand your audience is the key one. If you have more time, look into your competitors. It'll probably help your audience understanding. But if your competitors are in the picture and you know your audience well enough, I think you can get quite far with that. In terms of the type of content or the type of output that you want to create, if you're doing it for a specific role, if you say you want to be a copywriter, I would focus on creating a piece that shows my copywriting, whereas so maybe a blog over a social media post, just because you have more room to play with. A blog is a lot longer, so that gives you an opportunity to show off your skills a lot more.
Definitely. Since you're more into the technical side than SEO, what would you choose? What would you go for?
That's a good question. I think it's difficult without data, right? So I look a lot at website data and look for improvements there. And if you don't have access to it, it's going to be more tricky. And I don't think that that's necessarily something that you'd get into as an entry-level role. You would maybe get into SEO, but more the copywriting side, maybe the keyword research side of it. So that might be not as technical, but you are using some of the tools. You could do some keyword research and build a plan around how that, hopefully, if you weave it through your website, look through the home pages, are the keywords that you think this company should rank for? Are they in the right places? And if not, suggest improvements there.
Perfect, thank you very much. And I've got one more question to ask you as well. If you were reviewing that project that the person did, what would make you say that this actually good enough to show in the portfolio? What would be the criteria, what's going to be looking really good and what might need some improvement?
I think being able to comprehend the purpose of it, the way it was carried out, and the results of it, that would be something that I think this is worth being in a portfolio. And then as for the actual work, I think that's just gonna, I really think it depends on, as an outsider looking at this piece of work in your portfolio, being able to understand its purpose in there.
Perfect. So the purpose is the key moment that everyone should focus on when they're building campaign, case study, whatever it is.
I think you want to close the loop. So you wouldn't want a piece of content or work in there that makes someone think, well, it's just a random blog post, or like we said, just going out and making a social media post. I would want to understand why this was done and what was the thinking behind it. How did the person approach it? Because if you, like you mentioned Eric Doyle earlier and the interview you did with him, if you're thinking of all the people that you're competing with in the market when you're trying to apply for a job, there are things that you can use to differentiate yourself. And ultimately, as a hiring manager, I would want to understand how this person thinks. Not just that they can use a tool or that they can write a blog post, but how did they approach it and why did they do that? And that's going to help me, just like when you think about submitting a CV, whereas compared to a CV and cover letter, everything that you can add that shows the way you think and you approach is just going to help set you apart.
Yeah, exactly. Your personality is the biggest cut-through factor that you need to use, but for some reason people are either scared or they don't really understand that this is the cut-through factor that you can put in any type of portfolio, in any type of CV, in any type of product or whatever you're doing with your campaign. You can show yourself, you can show your thinking, and that's gonna set you apart.
It is difficult, right? Because the corporate world kind of tells you that there is one way of doing CVs, and even I would say maybe portfolios have been a thing before and I just wasn't aware of it, but it feels like it really started when freelance social media managers and web designers and all that kind of stuff popped out of the ground. It felt like it was a thing during COVID, to be honest.
Yes, you're actually quite right on that, because I remember when I had a random conversation with a random person at the restaurant, and I knew at that moment that they are marketers, and I just wanted, because at that moment I just finished uni and I just wanted to get as many experiences, as many knowledge as possible, as much knowledge as possible. I decided to speak with them and ask them how did they get the job, what did they do, and so on. And when I asked them about the portfolio, they said no, we didn't have one.
Yeah.
And then we're well, I'm just building a website for my portfolio. It's oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't a thing for some reason. But you guys better use it, better start to create your portfolio. And well, that's about it, to be honest. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you very much for making time. And we've got one more question to ask you. If you could text 18-year-old self about getting into the marketing, what would you advise to do in the next 48 hours?
Oh, in the next 48 hours?
Yeah. What would be the one thing that will move you closer to getting the job in the market?
It would be being as curious as possible and trying to pick the first thing that you think is going to be useful, is going to be a useful tool or a useful technique to know in marketing, and learn about it. Try it out, apply it to things, document it.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And if somebody wants to follow your work, where they should find you?
On LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is the best place.
Yes, that's the best place.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that. By the way, real quickly, I'm connecting with all the marketers in Aberdeen. Could I get your contact?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you.
Alright guys, as always, here are the 3 things from Hannah that you need to lock in.
If you only define experience as someone officially hiring you into a marketing role, you are probably selling yourself short. Even small, self-made project can become an experience if it shows what you've learned, what you've created, and how you think. Here is your number 2. A nicely designed Instagram post or a Canva design does not automatically become a proof. You need to explain why you created it, who it was for, and what was the business purpose. This is what makes your work commercially believable. You don't need to build a full campaign with 20 different assets. Pick one brand, one asset, and one improvement. Understand the audience, understand the purpose, make one useful change, then explain your thinking. That is already enough to start building your proof. And here is what I want you to do before the next week is out. Pick one brand or campaign you already find interesting. Find one asset you think could be improved. It could be a social post, a website section, a blog intro, an email, or an advert. You name it, guys. Then write down 3 things. Who is it for? What is the business purpose? And one thing would you improve and why? Then create the improved version and package it into a simple 1-page case study. This is your proof move. By the way guys, if you need help or it's not quite clear what you actually have to do, I have attached a link to the 7-day proof mission that you can find in the description. And as always guys, one last thing. If you had only 48 hours to move closer to landing your first marketing job, what would you actually do?
Drop it all in the comments, I read them all, and I'll catch you in the next one.